So let's talk a little bit about the Harrison Ford's actual Temple of Doom workout. And so there have been a few fans online who've created their own inspired versions, and there have been a few articles, most recently the Men's Health article in April that came out that gave perhaps the most detailed interview, but it doesn't also give all the information. So I thought I'd go and cross-reference the existing articles with the Body by Jake book written by Jake Steinfeld, who designed the workout itself, so we can see what that interview and the other interviews refer to when they're discussing different exercises, such as the broomstick and the towel exercises that's mentioned. A disclaimer though, the following is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. With any exercise, there's a possibility of physical injury, and it's at your own risk. So please always consult your physician first and foremost. And again, this is just for informational purposes only. And so we know that Harrison's trainer at the time of Temple of Doom and also Last Crusade was Jake Steinfeld, or Body by Jake. And so we even have a fun photos of him with Jake standing in front of one another. So an important thing to keep in mind is that Harrison always did have a somewhat athletic build, albeit very thin but relatively trim and athletic person. On the left-hand side, you have one from a photo of him from the 1970s. On the right-hand side, you have a photo from a Raiders shoot. Similar physique, still really just needed to bulk up a little bit more. And in fact, if you look at certain scenes in Temple of Doom, because of his back injury, he had a herniated disc, in certain scenes and his subsequent surgery and recovery, in some scenes that you'll see him much more bulked up, in other scenes you see him slightly slimmer. And it's hard to tell which one is before and after sometimes, and how much of it is just lighting as well. But if you can see between Temple of Doom and Raiders, in certain cases he does have almost very just slight differences in his build between those two, despite the training. And yet other times when you compare the same build compare him during the same shoot, he can look very different in different lighting. And again, maybe because of his recovery and weight loss, or because of the surgery. So you can see on the left-hand side, one from the film itself, another from behind the scenes of him working with the whip, where he seems a little bit heavier than the left-hand side. But again, it could just be the angle. Again, another comparison between scenes, slight differences, but positioning also matters. And here's another more drastic comparison. What you see on the right-hand side is, I think, the screenshot that a lot of people focus on in terms of how built he is in this movie. But in some behind-the-scenes photos, you can also see him in a more relaxed position where it doesn't give out the same effect around the shoulders and the arms, and that could be lighting, that could be location, sound stage shooting, and it could also be, again, because of the surgery. Now, in terms of sources, we have the Men's Health article, which is the most detailed and has quoted sections from Jake on the workout specifically. But we also had small quotes here and there from people like Frank Marshall in the Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, the oral history article, which is actually a combination of past sources as well. We also have the Grantland article. And of course, adding to the mix, I'm throwing into the mix here, is the actual book by Jake. And interestingly, even though there have been those 4 articles that have come out in the past decade, nobody seems to have really focused on actually looking up some of Jake's books. So I did find this book from 1984. It's the same year the Temple of Doom came out. However, it doesn't quite have what exactly would be the workout, but it has a variety of different exercise programs. And I think if you were to take a look at it, you'd be surprised at what it has, because it's very light weights. But at the same time, based off these articles, it seems to be the case that Harrison used very light weights, high repetitions, and a lot of calisthenics as well. And I won't cover every single minor exercise in this book because just fair use and all that, and I also don't think that it's always necessary to cover every single detail in terms of arm circles, neck circles, basic stretches. Perhaps I want to focus on maybe one of the more essential ones and keep to as close to what's covered in the articles as possible, so as to avoid too much imaginary additions and reconstructions as possible. I do want to make sure that it's accurate without venturing too far off. Now, in terms of surviving footage, we have about 3 exercises from between the Temple of Doom featurette to the Timeless Heroes documentary that came out in 2023. So we have neck presses, we have dumbbell curls, and we have a lying down on the bench with the feet up bench press with dumbbells as well. And you notice that this is a very old gym, and that's because this is on site. This is in the town of Kandy, where they're filming the village scenes, and a lot of this equipment's probably from like the 1900s. Sorry, probably period accurate to Indy himself. But it's interesting that these are you can clearly see he's using very light weights, even with the bench press. So we have that as visual confirmation that what you'll see in the books, as I show you, matches this use of light weights in his actual workout. Interestingly, a variation of this is shown in the book itself, but the arm position is slightly different, but you can see it's the same. I wouldn't give it the same name as Jake does here in the book. It's more of a bench press, but it is what it is. And you can see it's like he recommends 10-pound weights for about 10 reps, which is very low. And I'll show you why, because it's not a regular workout. It's more like a circuit training or a high intensity interval training workout. So here's the behind the neck press that we see as well. That's also in the Bodyweight Jake book, though interestingly it's captioned slightly incorrectly because it's stated as a standing dumbbell press. The dumbbell curls are also present in the book. I've used a photo of Jake at the end detailing very briefly like what his workout looks like. He doesn't give the reps for his workout, but and he uses heavier weights for himself, but yeah, and the rest of the book, the photos are of just people using 10-pound dumbbells for like 15 reps. We do see that he does have a preference for these kinds of simultaneous dumbbell curls rather than alternating dumbbell curls. And in Harrison's case, they seem to be done against the wall to try to maintain form. So he's definitely working towards failure. So as you'll see, though the recommendations are high reps and low weight, Harrison for sure was going to failure every time with these sets. Okay, so we have the footage. Now let's compare it with the Grantland article, which came out in 2012. The important details are that even during Temple of Doom shooting, Ford and Steinfeld rose at 5 a.m. to plow through Steinfeld's regimen, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and dips. I'm not kidding you, man. He'd get down and bang out 1,000 sit-ups, Steinfeld says. So yeah, this, I think a bunch of people online on Reddit, on Raven, and I think maybe the Club Obi-Wan forums, we discussed it previously that, it seems very, very basic, very straightforward. And that, I don't think this is the entire picture. I'm also not sure if, as I'll show you, but these are definitely components of it. It is found in his book. I don't know if he really did 1,000, but it's possible. It's theoretically possible. It's just it would be very hard on the back, I would say. If done too quickly. Right? Interestingly, another detail is that Spielberg also tried to do the same workout, and this is relevant because when we're trying to figure out how many days that this workout occurred. So here are the push-ups that he does, the big boy push-ups, because he has the progression from kneeling push-ups to full push-ups, which he suggests as 5 reps, 5 seconds to do, so I guess super slow push-ups essentially. So here are pull-ups. In the book, he actually doesn't have regular like a pull-up setup. He has this as a on-the-road thing where you use a diving board at a hotel maybe. You do what he calls inverted curl pull-ups, which are actually, I guess today we would call them neutral grip pull-ups. So you'd have them, your hands facing one another and doing a pull-up underneath the board here. And he also had a diving board pull-ups, which are essentially what we would call chin-ups, where your hands are facing your face and you're pulling upwards. In terms of dips, he also uses the pool as an example, using the pool ladder to do regular dips essentially, but he also has a reverse chair dip of sorts too. Sit-ups wise, the book primarily shows on the ground fairly regular sit-up, crunch-like sit-up sometimes, he has them graded depending on difficulty for the person, but also at the end of the book he shows himself doing inverted sit-ups as well on a sit-up bench. But aside from that, looking at the next article, we have Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, An Oral History from 2017. And we have this quote from Frank Marshall. And Frank Marshall is the guy that you saw holding Harrison's feet while doing the bench press. So he was definitely there. We have video proof that he was there watching the workout. So he is a reliable person to go by. And he mentions that every once in a while in Sri Lanka, you'd hear Steinfeld's voice bellow, "Okay, drop and give me 50. 1, 2, 3, 4. And amazingly enough, there was an old YMCA in Kandy, so he and Harrison would go down there to work out 2 or 3 times a week. It was the most primitive weight room I've ever seen, with very old weights and ancient benches. Incredible." So again, we have video evidence of that. We can verify that, of course, and so that's correct. 2 or 3 times a week. That's important to keep in mind as we move towards the more recent Men's Health article. So just keep that one in mind. The drop and give me 50 might also refer to mountain climbers, not push-ups necessarily, but it could also be referring to that, right? In Jake's book, he has the actual phrase, drop and give me 50, but it's 50 mountain climbers, or he calls Jake runs. So again, here's Frank Marshall holding Harrison's feet while doing this version of bench press. I don't think this is very popular these days anymore, but I think in the 80s and 90s, even 2000s, some people would do it. I do remember in gym class that in the 2000s in high school, middle school, that we were taught this. Again, 2 or 3 times a week does show up in relation to Spielberg and the Temple of Doom workout, because Steven Spielberg mentions the Monday, Wednesday, Friday split, with the Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays being days off. But again, this will be relevant later. And then finally we have the Men's Health article, or How Body by Jake Trainer Turned Harrison Ford into an Action Hero at 40. And this actually has the most detail, and amazingly, Ryan Smith, thank you to you for trying to answer these pertinent questions for some of us nerds. So the article describes them waking up at 5:30 each morning, so that corresponds to some of the older articles that I mentioned, the last two, which states 5 a.m. So 5 a.m., 5:30, about the same. And the pair would begin their 30-minute sessions, so that's important. So supposedly they're doing a 30-minute workout now, which is enough in many ways if there's enough intensity, but it's certainly much more conservative than I think a lot of the hyped up Hollywood workouts these days, where everybody's like, oh, I worked out 2 or 3 hours in the gym every day, and they show off their roided out arms, or no, I ate chicken and broccoli or whatever. So the 30-minute session started by stretching with the broomstick. Then they'd move on to the rest of the workout. We focus on different body parts depending on the day. Monday and Thursday, chest and triceps. Tuesday and Friday, back and biceps. Wednesday, Saturday, shoulders and legs. Abs every day. So this is different from a couple of the other sources earlier, which had a 2 or 3 day split. Frank Marshall says worked out 2 or 3 times a day. They'd go to the gym. Spielberg's workout, which supposedly is the same, was also a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split. So it's possible maybe they misremembered. Jake himself is the person that did train Harrison, so it might be reliable to depend on him for this detail. It's also possible that Spielberg had the same workout, or Frank was also exposed to the same workout, but they only did it 3 times a week, so just half of it, right? Because you have repeats of the same workouts throughout the week. The Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Saturday are 3 sets of different workouts, just repeated, alternating one another. Interestingly, again, abs workout every day can be pretty intensive, and Steinfeld says the pair would use the towel for resistance training before moving on to light dumbbell work, but they ultimately found that the towel gave them more resistance, whether it was a towel pulls for your back, tricep extensions over the head, bicep curls, all kinds of bicep exercises. There was more play with the. So looking at that, right, there are a few additional components that maybe for most of us, if we look at it, we don't know what's going on. What would you do with a broomstick, for example? How would you stretch with a broomstick? And B, what towel workouts are these? These towel pulls. Is it the wrap it around a doorknob thing that some people online suggest when you working out in a hotel, or what is it? And it turns out it's actually in the book itself. In his 1984 book, these are presented, and they're pretty straightforward, very basic uses of the broomstick, right, as just normal twists, as well as side stretches, lunges, and bent over twists as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about the reps later. The towel workouts similarly are partner resistance exercises essentially. So the towel pulls is the one in the bottom center here, where one person sitting down, one person standing, and essentially what you do is you are trying to pull the other person towards you, more or less. Another one would be bicep curls, basically, so one person's kneeling and they're pulling down on your arms as you pull up to do your curl. And then the third one, tricep extension, similarly, you have somebody holding the towel behind you as you try to do the triceps extension. And I mean, all of these could be substituted with cable exercises, but it seems to be the case that they didn't use cable exercises because they're working out of Harrison's home, it seems. And then later at the YMCA in Candy, though, which might not have had any additional workout equipment other than some dumbbells and some barbells as well. And then 2 final components that are really important to keep in mind. It brings it all together, and if you look at these pages, you'll note that they don't seem to be enough to build the physique but it seems to be the case that they used high rep regimen to make up for that difference in terms of weight. And so Jake states, it wasn't about Indiana Jones becoming a bodybuilder. This dude was just ripped, and getting ripped is a lot of repetitions. We're doing 100 rep sets, like I like the superset. I'm an old school guy. And after each set, Ford would drop down and do 50 to 100 of what Steinfeld called his Jake runs, basically mountain climbers, followed by a set of push-ups. So yeah, so it seems to be the case that after every set, you do a combination of whatever workout. You do mountain climbers and you do push-ups. So you increase the volume significantly throughout between every other exercise you'll be doing for the body. And this might be what Frank Marshall was referring to in terms of drop and give me 50. So not just push-ups, also mountain climbers. Again, confirming the whole workout in the field thing, the Men's Health article also mentions how the pair would keep up Ford's fitness by visiting the YMCA in Kandy that made Steinfeld's living room routines look like a class at Equinox. So I wouldn't call that thing in Sri Lanka a gym, Steinfeld says, adding that the two stuck to the same 30-minute routine during filming. The more he saw results, the more focused he got. So again, 30-minute routine, lots of high reps, and low weight. So this is essentially a circuit training, high intensity interval training, not to be confused with HIIT. And just to fill in some of the other gaps in terms of leg training, he does have bodyweight squats as well as these calf raises. Bodyweight calf raises sometimes boosted by somebody sitting on top of you to add body weight to it. Aside from the regular push-up, he also shows this unique variation of the close grip decline push-up as well. Don't know if they use this one, but it's interesting to note. In terms of dumbbell work, there's also a triceps extension using the 10-pound dumbbells as well. So that might have also been a component in addition to the towel triceps extension. And also in terms of abdominal workouts, aside from the broomstick twists and the sit-ups, he also has these leg raises as well. Another is the big crunch, which is essentially a bicycle crunch, and this is done for 50 reps. Weighted arm circles also seem to be a thing, so a lot of this light dumbbell workout is, for any old physical culture nerds out there, it is reminiscent of the sort of Professor Attila Eugene Sando light dumbbell system to some extent. And maybe that's the historical influence of that, because this is from the 1980s. So, putting all the pieces together, here is as accurate as I could come up with, based off of all the preceding sources and the book, what the split would have been. And the rep ranges I'm giving here are based off of the Body by Jake book, though as noted in the articles themselves, some of them, the Men's Health article, for example, those reps could go up to 100. So these reps are based off of the book. In reality, Harrison might have done more reps. And there's no multiple sets, it seems. It's all just one set of each thing based off of how the book is organized. All the workouts are just one set of this exercise, one set of this exercise, or one set of variations, right? Maybe you'll do the neutral grip pull-ups and then you'll do the chin-ups right afterwards. So you're supersetting with similar exercises for similar muscle groups, essentially. Yeah, so I think you can just take a look at this. And another point, let's see. Yeah, to fill in some of the gaps with the dumbbell and the leg exercises, I've added the ones in the book as well, and those are underlined here. So if you want to see the difference between what's from the articles and what's additions from the book would be there. So if you just wanted to go by what the articles state, you wouldn't have the underlined components to it. But nothing here is something I came up with in terms of exercises. Everything here comes from all of the 4 sources mentioned previously. And sorry, just to reiterate once again with this slide, Harrison does very much seem to be going to failure every single time with these exercises. So though I gave those rep ranges from the book earlier in the previous image, he is for sure doing far more than that, or either by adjusting the weight to be higher or simply doing more reps. And again, Jake does give 100 reps as being a potential case for some exercises. Here's a less text-heavy breakdown if you just want the individual images of the slides, what the workouts are like. Here's the Tuesday and Friday one, back and biceps. And here's the Wednesday and Saturday one, the shoulder and legs one. Interesting choice of different body parts to do. It doesn't seem like Harrison was doing heavy squats, per se. So then that's about it. In terms of final thoughts, it does look, depending on who you are, it could look very intense or it could look like it wouldn't be as focused on muscle building. Today, a lot of people would focus on heavy benching or deadlifts and squats, the big 3. Yeah, but that for a lot of celebrity workouts that wouldn't have been as popular back then. It does emphasize high reps, high rep, low rep arguments. That's perennial question online, and even in journal publications on exercise, it varies. They can both stimulate growth more or less. They just have to push your body enough to have that growth stimulus. And it is overall a more athletic conditioning workout as opposed to a bodybuilding workout or a powerlifting workout, which can result in a build like this, but also Harrison inherently did have the background, either other exercise that he does. I mean, even now he does a lot of bicycling. So he wasn't working from nothing. It wasn't one of those like drastic Hollywood changes that are somewhat suspect. This is a very natural physique that is very attainable and maybe something that is more worth pursuing than I think the relatively toxic extremes that I think Hollywood physiques have gone to at this point. But anyways, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.